Hey guys, welcome to the Real Deal video blog, and this week I want to talk to you about accountability in recovery. So there's no question that accountability gets talked about quite a bit in recovery circles. People tell you that you need to hold your peers accountable for them to grow, and that they should do the same for you, of course. People will also tell you that you need to be accountable for your own actions. You need to hold yourself accountable and be accountable. But why is this all so important? What's the big deal about accountability? What it boils down to is that, as is commonly accepted, addiction is a disease, but there's a huge difference between addiction and other diseases such as cancer. The difference is that cancer simply affects the body. Your cells multiply and grow out of control. You get sick, sometimes you get very sick, but you're still you. At the end of the day, it doesn't really change who you are. You don't really act any differently besides, the differences of someone who might be really sick. On the other hand, addiction is a little bit more complex. And yes, there is the physical disease aspect of addiction, the craving that happens when people use or drink, the compulsion to use more and more and keep going back to it day after day. But there's also a whole massive complex pattern of behaviors and emotions that go along with addiction. People who are in active addiction are very, very different from people who struggle with any other sort of disease. As most people are well aware, having cancer doesn't make you drive drunk or steal jewelry from your parents, but that's something that happens very, very commonly in addiction. Addiction fundamentally changes the person who you are, and unfortunately, the sad truth is that this change is usually not for the better. There's a reason that addicts and alcoholics have such a bad reputation. Society looks down on someone who struggles with addiction. Society sees the drug addict or the alcoholic as someone to feel sorry for, someone to avoid, someone to be afraid of, someone that you should never give any money to, should avoid helping, and that's sad. It's a sad reality, but unfortunately it is reality, and the truth is, as much as I hate to say it, that sometimes these behaviors and these reputations, these fears are justified. I'm not saying it's fair, but it's the truth. Society looks down on the reputation of addiction, and getting sober may take away those physical immediate symptoms of addiction and some of the other immediate consequences of addiction. Like, someone who's sober obviously isn't going to be driving drunk anymore, but it doesn't solve those behavioral and emotional issues. It doesn't correct many of these behaviors that made society look down on someone to begin with. So people are sober, right? We're at that stage. They're not using or drinking anymore. They're not going through withdrawal. They've lost that craving. But those behaviors and emotions that I talked about are very much still there. And that is when accountability comes in. It takes time to learn how to live and behave normally. And I say normally, but the truth is quite a few normal people haven't really quite figured it out either. So people who struggle with addiction are definitely not alone in having to learn a better way to live. But it is not an easy thing for someone in recovery to turn around and just change everything about themselves. Some of these behaviors, some of these patterns have been going on for years or even decades, sometimes long before substance use ever even entered into the picture, believe it or not. And holding someone accountable means pointing it out to them when they slip into their old behaviors or bad patterns or bad emotions, and that allows them to stop, pause, step back, take stock of what happened, and hopefully make a change. If they really want to change at that stage, they will. It takes a few tries sometimes, definitely, and it's a painful process. It is never easy for either party to participate in, but it is totally 100% necessary for growth. If it was easy for people to make changes on their own without accountability, to just put down those drugs and alcohol and turn around and become a great person, they would do it. We wouldn't have all these problems that we have with addiction. But in the real world, things don't quite work that way, but that's okay. There is a solution. We have steps that we can work through. A lot of people have figured this out, and all it takes is starting to practice accountability along with the other aspects of a recovery program. It's not easy for people to make changes, and they generally don't do it by themselves, and that's why we have accountability. Every day, people are finding successful long-term recovery, helped by the accountability that they get from fellow community members, fellow members of their recovery circles who care about and support them, and are willing to give them accountability even when it's hard, even when they don't want to, and even when it feels mean or stupid. So I invite you to ask yourself, what kind of role is accountability playing in your life?